Hi YouTube. We're back for part 4 of the Canopy Latch release, which is actually technically a different build series to a certain extent, because this is a Canopy build portion. We're going to be building a mechanism to catch the front. There were supposed to be a couple of pieces included that look like this plywood here, and the seller, Ian, had told me that I don't know if they got lost or what, but either way, it's not a big deal. So I just wanted to show you this epoxy is about, I'm going to call it about 30 minutes in. It's a 15-minute epoxy, so it's not enough set to be used if we were going to go fly with it, but it's enough to show you how it works. So just pushing this down, let the latch back, and as you can see, it's in. So now I just need to be careful. The other thing you can do is, if you want to take some, I have this baby powder, when it gets low, I just cut open the side, and that's how I save the waste. And you can take and sprinkle a little bit of that on the outside of the epoxy, because keep in mind, this stuff is already pretty much where it's going to be. Okay, now we would have to wash this off with water before we turn around and try to add another layer of epoxy. Okay, or you could epoxy that all in if you wanted, but you just have to make sure you cover it. But the whole idea here is that that will prevent sticking. Just that little teeny bit of stickiness still on the outside. Okay, so pull that open, push this on, and then let her rip. See? And it's in there. So that's excellent. So now all I have to do is just get that pin to hold this in. I don't know if you can see. Yes, you can't see in there, but you can see that we have a very smooth finish there. So we'll go ahead and release, lift, and see we didn't stick, which is nice. So my next objective is going to be to, well, I don't want to stick that on the foam. I want to probably go ahead and set this in there. My next objective is to make a pin. And so what I was going to use for that pin, which is this piece of wood, if I recall, this shape, Ian had actually traced a shape of it, if I recall. But I'm actually not super concerned with copying that exact shape, because if it's anything like the shape that came on this latch release, it's going to be a joke. So I think I'm going to take and follow the same protocol I used for locating this portion. I'm going to do the same thing up here, and I'm going to take and put a piece of foam, which you already have some cut out. I'm going to use that foam to help me locate a pin, which could be as simple as one of these Q-tips. So we're going to do that right now. Just grab that little piece that we put away already. And this is just going to help us to make sure that whatever we make is going to fit. And we can make a more permanent solution, either around it, next to it, or get good measurements to cut it out of another material, like wood, or plastic, or carbon fiber. So I need to closely mimic the shape of the canopy here. So I'm just going to cut that by hand. Just kind of at a bit of an angle. Well, I got a good shape up there, I just didn't get such a good shape down here. So now I need to take and trim off the edges. I was just really happy with the way that worked on the back portion of this canopy. So I'm going to copy it up here to a certain extent. Again, if you guys have other methods that work real nice, you can share them. this is pretty close, so I can just kind of take it along something stout like this countertop. I can kind of roll that shape into it, take off the nasty rough edges. I don't expect to permanently have this in there, but it's possible it would end up being permanent, which I didn't expect to be leaving that in there either, and I did. This one's probably just going to position the pin, and then it's just more or less going to be glued in a blob of glue. Let's just be practical here. Okay, so I need to cut this twice now. Didn't let it get hot enough. Okay, 1 cut, 2 cut, 3 cut. I'm just squaring everything up relative to the correct angle of roll. Alright, let's get this thing turned off. Okay, so now we should have a pretty good close approximation. See? Real close. Now we'll just pick the correct orientation we want that. That's pretty darn good right there. So now we need to glue it in there. You might want to take just a little bit more material off here. This thing is still warm, it's not hot. Okay, just a little bit of shaping. Okay, very good. Very close to what I want. Okay, so now foam safe CA, Bob Smith Industries, nothing special here, medium. You could use thin if you wanted, you could use something else altogether. Wouldn't use epoxy here because this is just potentially temporary. It's amazing how much easier life is with Kicker. When I was a kid, I used to never use Kicker. I didn't even know it existed. And maybe it didn't, I don't know. But I used this stuff as a kid when I was building balsa wood planes. I don't know if I mentioned this in one of my build videos the other day, where somebody was complaining that this isn't really a build. It's just a kit. Well, of course it is. But I used to build balsa wood planes back when I was a kid. I just didn't do radio controlled because at the time I was a kid. I didn't have money for it. It's hard to do. This hobby is certainly not free. Parents would help out with stuff once in a while, but you know, they're not gonna fill your ceiling with planes, you know. Okay, so we got that on there. So now that we have this positioned, we should be able to start doing some trial runs. So I'll start with this piece. This is just a regular run-of-the-mill Q-tip. And I think I'm just gonna probably just glue it to the bottom. Just take some side cutters. Cut it in half, might need another one. I'm going to leave some of this material on here. Cut that off. And the reason I'm leaving that is because that'll probably go ahead and give me something to glue my material to. Seems like that's going to be a little on the low side. Yeah, it's probably not as low as I think. So we'll try it long first. We'll back it off as necessary. Get into the fibers. There. The tip of this stupid thing is getting clogged again, as usual. I'm going to take and flip this thing over, give it a little bit of kicker. And we'll just stick that on there. Remember, this is just foam. We just break it off if we don't like the way it fits. While we let that sit, I'm gonna get this tip cleaned. There's got to be a better way to do this. Okay. And of course there's glue in the spout already. And that's how that happens, guys. Okay. So that CA should be set up plenty good. Just for testing, of course. You can see that it's going to stick out there. Pretty centrally located. Oh, buddy, that's really good. Okay, pull that back. Okay, so obviously it allows quite a little bit too much play. But it's hard to tell because it breaks free so easy. How are we going to fix that? We'll just glue it more. But we're also going to force this into a tighter angle because I think we need to be up a little bit like that. You know, and there's nobody saying that you couldn't just do this, but this is not going to be very strong, guys. And sure, during a crash, you might be able to kind of call this a sacrificial lamb that would break away. But to be honest with you, I don't think we're going to need a sacrificial lamb on this portion of the plane. I'd rather just have it hold. What concerns me if it's a loose bond, when the motor's running, if the motor would slap the side of this, not the motor, but the prop, if the prop would slap the side of it, it could potentially knock it free. Just want to make sure that's not wet. You can see it's significantly closer now. So as we put this in, it's going to pull it down into the lock. So I'm going to hold the lock back to see if we can get that angle. That's a pretty... Ooh, yes. And it's already trying to break it, I believe. Okay, so it's tight in the back. That position is not too far off. Obviously, I could break it if I wanted. But look how close that is, guys. I don't want that lip. I want that lip tight like that. It's just so close, though. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect it to be absolutely perfect. You can have some imperfection on these models. So lift. As we lift, we need to rotate back. Now let's see. See, now it broke at the back. Okay, well, let's go ahead and unbreak it then. Let's take some of this, clean the spout. This time we'll get a little bit heavier with the CA. And you guys at home are probably thinking about right now, whoa, are you doing a permanent glue job there? I don't know, maybe. You're probably thinking, are you kidding me? You're gonna put a Q-tip in there? Well, I don't know, maybe. I might also just do this to totally validate my position. But I was thinking about if I had a certain amount of flexibility in this block here, that would really forgive a lot of failings, you know? But I think it's just going to be too much. It's probably not going to work permanently. Okay, so we're going to try it again. We'll stick that in there. Release the hatch. Push it down. Push that hatch. That's pretty reasonable right now. But now you can kind of see where it ends up actually going to. So now my next step will be to, and you guys might be wondering why I'm spending so much attention on this canopy when I could be doing other things like rudder and stuff. Well, until I know exactly where this goes, I don't know what type of clearance I'm going to need. And because this is the exterior, I'm going to have to get other stuff in there underneath. And so I figure I better make sure I have enough room before I start mounting servos and things like that. Okay, so now that we know that the shape is appropriate, now we just have to basically make our wood piece, if we're going to use wood, or if we're going to use carbon fiber or some other product. And then we'll probably epoxy it in, of course. So what I have to do is I have to regrettably break this free. But I mean, I like the shape, and I've got a nice mark there now. I know exactly where it needs to be. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's not too bad. Because that's pretty much the factors that I needed. Of course it's out. So I'm going to dry out this kicker from the CA kicker. And then I'm probably going to use some sort of a cleaning agent like alcohol. Grab a piece of cotton ball. This is like a giant Q-tip, guys. Oh, hilarious. If you don't see that that's hilarious, you haven't watched enough of my videos yet. Alright, so we'll just let that set for a minute. We are going to need some texture with which to bond our epoxy. And I don't want it to be this foam, but I can see it really easy right now. So I might go ahead and leave that in there for now, for the moment. And I'm going to pause it, we'll come right back. Okay, so I have a couple of different ideas here. This bamboo skewer is very light, but quite strong. And this stick is quite strong, but it's a lot heavier, and it doesn't quite fit. So I just wanted to rule out those two possibilities. This one is a little bit too thin, this bamboo skewer, but it is very strong for the amount of weight that it adds. And I'm thinking if I coat this with epoxy, it's going to become thicker. It's also going to keep it from breaking apart like this tends to break. Now, of course, I'm going to have a motor up there, so I don't want to get too excessively long on this, but I can always trim it back too. So let's just migrate our exact plan from there to here, and then we'll fine tune it. Just cut with side cutters. Take a really sharp X-Acto knife. Get a nice, really clean cut. If you're into that sort of thing. Okay, nice clean cut. So now I need to make some sort of a block that will hold it up. It does not have to be made of foam, of course. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not going to be made of foam, but it might be made of this piece of wood. So I need to have a nice square edge. Hold on one sec, I gotta double check something. Okay, so at one point that must have gone in there. I can't remember exactly where. But either way, I don't really care. I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna probably drill a hole at the angle to mimic this. The drill. Get the drill bit. Too big. It's still a little bit big, but we'll see. That's pretty darn close. Okay. Let's see if we can do this. Now we're going to be removing almost all the material, so it's going to be kind of challenging to do this hole. We'll see if we can get it. For those of you who haven't yet drilled a drill bit through your finger, that's a good way to do it. I personally got that out of the way many years ago. This must be like the world's hardest wood or the world's crappiest drill bit. I haven't decided which one's which. So I'm going to hold it here so I can get some more pressure on it. Okay, made it all the way through, guys. See? Look at that. Fancy dance. Now I can take this little piece, stick it through, and make it mimic very closely the angle. Okay? So now I need to try to trim this. So in order to trim this, I think I'm gonna take and score it like this with a knife. And I can see the mark. I'll just cut it a couple of times with this. If this doesn't work well, then I'll transition into another method. The other method being a saw. And guys, we're out of time, so we'll come back on part 5. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.